The Hamburglar got out of jail and went right back in 24 hours. Hello all of you beautiful people. I'm so sorry that I haven't been updating here, so much has happened. So buckle up, this is a long ride. I did manage to get a restraining order against the Hamburglar, with the help of CPS. Over the course of the last couple months, original CPS lady lost her job too, as we weren't the first time she had abused her power, and Hamburglar ended up losing her mind in a spectacular way. Pregnancy loss details in this paragraph. My pregnancy was a bit of a roller coaster. At my first US, for those who don't remember, they thought I had a blighted ovum. I went back a week later to see a healthy fetus with a good strong heartbeat, but a small spot that looked like it might be a subdural hemorrhage. Scheduled another US a week after that, went by myself while my husband was out of state for work, and found that the hemorrhage had grown from less than half the size of the babe to more than half of my uterus, and there was no longer a heartbeat. DH drives a truck, so it was impossible to even get in touch with him that day until he got off work. Due to the size of the hemorrhage and the fact that I hadn't had any bleeding, I was going to have a D&C to prevent sepsis, and I didn't want to schedule anything without DH there with me. So, I left the OB and called my dad, in a moment of weakness I still regret, months later. My dad was an angel, immediately supportive, and offered to come get the kids and watch them for as long as we needed. Thankfully, I turned him down, as the kids were still with my mom since I had been put on bed rest up until this appointment. I told him everything that had happened, including my current condition and the impending procedure, and the fact that I couldn't talk to DH until he got off work, so I was basically dealing with this alone. He told me to come out to their house, and I told him point blank that the last person I wanted to deal with right then was Hamburglar, and he said he understood and dropped it. So of course he told Hamburglar what was going on. And of course she proceeds to blow up DH's phone for 6 hours. So when he gets off work, instead of immediately calling me as he would have, he called her first because he was afraid someone had died. He had hundreds of missed calls from her. She answers the phone by screeching about how I'm a murderer. I went off while he was gone to get an abortion. Apparently I had been planning this for weeks. Anyway, he knew she was full of shit and hung up on her, then called me. So I didn't even get to tell him in my own way. I had to explain that Hamburglar was a fucking bitch, and how she had come to that wildly different conclusion. I called my dad to tell him what she did, and as far as I know he was pissed and promised we wouldn't be hearing from her again. I ended up getting the procedure scheduled for a week after the US, and luckily got the cameras we were gifted set up before then, because we came home afterwards to a completely destroyed home. The crazy bitch busted through our window with a golf club that she would have had to buy for this express purpose because neither of them golf, and let herself in, then proceeded to destroy everything we own. She destroyed our TV, our Xbox, took a knife to our mattresses, including the kids, and our brand new couch. She piled every piece of clothing she could find in the house, ours and the kids, in the middle of the living room, and covered them in bleach, gallons and gallons. She smashed every breakable thing she could find with the golf club, including the toilet, our dishes, every window in the house, everything. She shoved our AC unit out the window onto the ground, destroying it. She didn't touch the food though, so I guess the don't mess with your grandkids food lesson set in, but that was it. We got home to Hamburglar sprawled in the front yard, golf club in one hand, and my bottle of wine in the other, absolutely plastered, screaming about how I'm a murdering bitch who hates children, trying to keep my babies from me. We're also those weird people that collect liquor in weird, interesting bottles, and every .1 was smashed in the yard around her. I'm not sure how many she tried to drink and how many she just broke, because she would have died if she had drank them all, but she had clearly drank plenty. She didn't even get up out of the grass to actually engage us, just laid there and yelled, I guess trying to make sure the whole neighborhood knew how awful I was. So DH calls the cops while I sit there and listen to her screech about how I'm going to hell. I murdered my child because I can't handle the responsibility of being a parent. I'm a baby killer. I should have just died instead, because she would have raised my baby ad nauseum. She was honestly just repeating the exact same things over and over and over. Meanwhile, I just had a D&C for a miscarriage maybe an hour ago. I'm dealing with the pain of losing a very much wanted pregnancy, and she's here spewing her pro-life bullshit at me. After about 20 minutes of this, the cops show up. DH finally goes inside with one officer, while the other stays outside with Hamburglar and me, and actually sees the extent of the damage. Meanwhile, the cop outside listens to Hamburglar for a few minutes, then turns to me and says, "Are you sure you want to press charges? I mean, I can get her for drunk and disorderly, but there's no proof she actually did anything." Well, all of my windows are smashed. She's holding a golf club, and that's my bottle collection in pieces around her. So... well, that's all circumstantial. There's no proof of anything. Let me tell y'all something real quick. I live in the Bible Belt. It took me all of 0.5 seconds to figure out what was going on here. This cop had listened to her abortion rant, decided she was justified, and was taking her side. Just wait. Isn't that what a lawyer's for? We have a restraining order. You have a restraining order. Yes, because she broke into our house and stole all of our food, and then tried to run me over with her car while I was pregnant. I swear this cop laughed in my face. Okay, well, you're not pregnant now. Guys, if DH and the other cop hadn't come back outside right, then I would have been the one in jail. I had enough time to scream, "I had a fucking miscarriage," before DH was back next to me and moving me away. The other cop quickly shut the first one down and said they were taking Hamburglar immediately. He said it was the worst break-in he had ever seen in terms of damage. He actually called the first cop an idiot, because Hamburglar wasn't in cuffs when he came back out and shut down the "it might be circumstantial" crap he was trying to spew. I guess some cops take restraining orders seriously. I gave my statement, had my mom come pick me up, and DH dealt with the rest of the cop stuff. My dad finally seemed to come to his senses and refused to bail Hamburglar out the next day when she had sobered up enough to call him. Him and several of his friends helped DH clean out all of our stuff, replace the broken windows with windows that were a bit more smash-resistant than the ancient windows we had before, and toilet, and financed new furniture to replace the stuff she ruined. He wasn't able to make us completely whole, but it's a start, and we're working on rebuilding. Of course, Hamburglar tried to plead not guilty and had to go to trial. We gave our lawyer, that my dad paid for, the recordings we had of her smashing our window, reaching through to unlock the door, and destroying our living room. It didn't get everything, but it was more than enough, so when she tried to say she showed up drunk because she was so distraught over what I'd done and found my house like that, she looked stupid AF. Now let's fast forward to this morning. Hamburglar was released on parole. I think? I'm not 100% the difference in parole and probation on Monday. So not actually 24 hours, but close enough. I have the kids in daycare because I go back to work in a week, so I left my house at 8 this morning to drive them to daycare, and then went back home. About 45 seconds after I lock the door behind me, Hamburglar pulls up in my driveway and gets out, so obviously she was watching for me to get home. She comes up to the door and starts knocking and calling through the door about how she just wants to talk. There's obviously been a bunch of misunderstandings between us. She wants to fix things, yada yada yada. Well, conditions of her release included she was not allowed to contact me or my family in any way, so I called the cops again, who were very prompt in showing up this time. I watched through my brand new window as 3 cop cars surrounded my house within 4 minutes of me calling, and Hamburglar was cuffed and thrown into the back of a car. When I opened my door to give my statement, they were much nicer, and Hamburglar had switched back to screaming obscenities at me from the back of the cop car. I called my lawyer, who seemed thoroughly unsurprised, and he promised to call me as soon as he figures out what's going on, when she gets rebooked and everything. So, that's all done, and I'm sitting at a Starbucks down the street using the Wi-Fi because I suddenly feel unsafe in my home again, even though I'm pretty much sure she's back in jail. I'm sorry for the novel, but this has been a hell of a roller coaster, and I needed to get it out. I haven't even called my dad yet. I'm waiting until I have something to say besides, "Get your she-demon on a leash."